Hi, it's me, Brody McLeod. I'm back in room 6 now. I lost a fight with the door a few days ago and it's now been repaired, so I'm back in this room here with a great view of the garden and stuff. It's a bit of a controversial video I want to make today, and I don't want to kind of prejudice or preemptively would like to express how much I don't want to generalise or culturally appropriate any kind of accusatory or discriminatory topics. We probably all, you've heard that saying, right? You know, if a tree falls in a forest and there's no one around to see it, doesn't make sound, you know. And what I want to talk about today is kind of like a policing and security issue, which is probably the most, aside from kind of murders, the most prolific sector of violent, sort of destructive and kind of really socially damaging crime that exists, which is sexual assault. It happens to people in every single country in the world. It's typically men who are prevalent in the statistical figures. And there's a bit of a kind of a paradoxical nature to it. So if you look at the per capita statistics on what's recorded, Great Britain comes pretty high in the list of the places where you're most likely to be sexually assaulted. But other nations have got a kind of a different paradoxical nature, where there is kind of like the United Nations have got estimated figures that the prevalence of sexual assault in these countries is extremely high, but because there's nominal police force and security infrastructure and data gathering techniques on paper, statistically, they don't seem to be as bad. So you've got kind of this inverted, invisible pie chart where you've got a section for crimes that we don't know anything about. So I'm going to read you the research on that crime report and the kind of the way that we view the statistics, because you know, it is very much a paradox, and I think the more that people know about it, the better, really. So the report is entitled "The Global Proliferation of Sexual Assault: A Probabilistic Synthesis." So the epistemological crisis is the statistical measurement of gender-based violence presenting as a profound challenge. While the World Health Organization estimates that 840 million women, approximately 30% of the whole global female population, experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, police records often contradict that reality. So in highly developed nations like the United Kingdom, frequently report higher per capita rates of sexual offences than in a conflict zone, for example. This creates an infrastructure illusion where statistics measure state capacity, digital legislation and public trust rather than true kind of criminal prevalence. So deconstructing the dark figure of crime, the dark figure, which it refers to, is the massive gap between sort of actual criminal incidents, what's actually happening day to day, and what the official police records indicate. And that gap's driven by a cultural stigma, a fear of retaliation and sort of systemic institutional failures. You know, if the sexual assaults are being committed by the police or by somebody who is paying the police to keep quiet, or by somebody who just, you know, is in a nation where there aren't very many police, you know, or there isn't any evidence of the crime taking place. That sort of systemic institutional failure is really prevalent. To circumvent flawed police data, criminologists and public health experts rely on epidemiological survey data, mathematical multipliers, to approximate the true scale of the crisis. The infrastructure illusion, Britain and the Nordic states. The UK actually presents an unparalleled case study in how robust infrastructure can inflate the statistics. So in the year ending March 2025, police in England and Wales recorded over 200,000 sexual offences, which is an increase largely driven by new laws like the Online Safety Act. However, the crime survey for England and Wales bypasses police figures, revealing that the actual epidemiological prevalence in the population remained at a flat 1.9%. Similar dynamic occurs with the Nordic paradox, where highly egalitarian societies like Sweden report elevated violence levels, and this is attributed to broad legal definitions of assault, high reporting rates, and a genuine private sphere backlash against public gender equality. So the multiplier effect: Latin America's vast dark figure. In regions facing severe institutional strain, the statistical dynamic inverts. Victimisation surveys reveal that the dark figure for gender-based violence in Latin America is between 92 and 95%. Because official police databases capture only about 5% of actual crimes, criminologists apply a multiplier of 20, which, I don't know what to say about that, but that's how they estimate the true prevalence. For example, the dark figure for sexual crimes against women in Chile is estimated at 98.4%, while in Mexico it stands at 95%. So almost every woman has experienced some kind of assault, supposedly, in their lifetime. Systemic containment and infrastructure collapse. So, for example, if you look at the figures in South Asia and Africa, in South Asia, raw police data is artificially low, and that, according to this investigation, is due to an active, culturally enforced paradigm of patriarchal containment. Also, deep cultural stigma, victim blaming, and massive judicial attrition rates heavily suppress those reports. So conversely, South Africa represents an infrastructure overwhelmed by extreme baseline violence. So despite recording over 53,000 sexual offences and 42,000 rapes annually, national studies estimate that nearly 40% of South African women experience lifetime physical or sexual violence. Absolutely atrocious. But the ultimate abyss is the weaponisation in conflict zones. So in active conflict zones, sexual assault transforms into a systematic weapon of terror. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, documented cases are surging, with over 35,000 cases of sexual violence against children recorded in just the first 9 months of 2025. The UN has documented hundreds of conflict-related sexual violence cases involving gang rape, and multiple perpetrators are used to traumatise, subjugate populations. These alarming figures present only a fraction of the true proliferation due to extreme physical violence, mass displacement, and total collapse of humanitarian infrastructure. The probabilistic amalgamation ranking. So by amalgamating official investigated figures with estimated multipliers, the epidemiological survey data, the true proliferation of sexual assault can be ranked globally. So probabilistically, conflict zones are the most highly rated danger zones for victims of sexual violence and sexual assault. So the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, and Haiti. Extreme, unquantifiable proliferation driven by militarised weaponisation of mass gang rape. Really horrible place to be. And good that it's getting a lot more attention. I've seen a lot of stuff in my kind of algorithm about the famine in Sudan, and I wish there's something I could do to try and help. Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, South Africa, exceptionally high prevalence driven by systemic violence, femicide, and overwhelmed justice system. They just haven't got the policing systems to collate that information, let alone prevent it from happening. Then you've got Latin America, so Mexico, Chile, really high prevalence. They reckon 95%. And there's a lot of mistrust of the police, they're very corrupt, as people say. South Asia, high actual prevalence, artificially suppressed in official records by intense patriarchal stigma, low conviction rates. And places like Sweden, interestingly, moderate actual prevalence, but inflated records by broad legal definitions and private sphere backlash against equality. So developed Anglosphere, the UK, so lowest relative actual proliferation, but highest recorded statistics due to that robust reporting infrastructure, historic reporting, and sort of digital offence legislation. I, for a long time, kind of like had this idea that that my family were like, I mean, it's I don't want to kind of accuse anybody of anything, or kind of, it's difficult because I did do that for a long time. I was like actively, openly accusing places like, you know, Signet Hospital, Taunton, and Signet hospitals everywhere, of whenever I've been mentally unwell, of like kidnapping my children, my brother, my sister, their children and stuff, and kind of the NHS recruiting paedophiles and rapists to come in. And it's weird, like literally there's about, I've been, it's probably about 750 nights in Signet Hospital since 2018, probably without exaggeration about 130 to 140 different guys. They all come in, they've got no bank card, no photo ID and no mobile phone, and their name's like Lee Allen or something like that, you know. Really just a coincidence, you know. And obviously, you know, the police force, a lot of people say they've had their phones confiscated by the police. It really is bizarre. But I've made a full recovery now. Everything's fine. I made this a few months back. This, yeah, it says Signet rapist parasites, but you know, I'm going to turn this video into a great celebration of a mental health recovery by ripping that to shreds and letting everybody know that these are truly fantastic hospitals. And if you've got severe mental illness or delusion or paranoia, or you're just worried about, you know, anything, do reach out to the NHS, you know, in Britain, and your GP. And if you do end up in a Signet hospital, just know that the staff here are amazing, and you know, you will be taken care of. And there's no great conspiracy. And you know, if you gain insight into your position, then hopefully eventually you'll come out like me, being able to hold a firm grasp of my sort of previous delusional state and understand the machinations of my brain regarding, like, you know, police and NHS institutional paedophilia to be just that, you know, delusions that never actually happened in real life. Have a great day, and I hope you all have good mental health, just like me.